You have 5 minutes. There's a mic in front of you, and you need to press the button. You need to press a button so we could hear you.
Reset. Can you guys hear me clearly? Okay, thank you everybody for hosting me. My name is Daniel Tate. I really appreciate the executive committee. Just to give you some quick background, I've lived in Toronto my whole life, born and bred. I love this city. Also, I'm a music historian. I'm a published author, and I also graduated from York University studying political science and urban planning. In fact, I wrote my undergrad thesis on Young Dundas Square back in 2004 when Kyle Ray was around. I got an A from Professor John Caulfield, and it was about a case study of neighborhood change at Yonge and Dundas. So this is not my first rodeo. So what does Dundas mean to Torontonians? Well, I can tell you that Dundas is etched in the cultural fabric of this city. For me personally, my grandfather used to drive me in his taxi cab back in the 1980s on Dundas. He would stop at Kensington Market, do his shopping. AGO is on Dundas. I would get my hair done at Dundas. Growing up on Dundas was beautiful. I have great memories of it, and so do millions of Torontonians. Even Yonge and Dundas is such a revered intersection for this entire city. I remember in 1993, after Joe Carter hit the home run against Philly, my dad and me drove down to Yonge and Dundas to party and celebrate. So many celebrations have happened there, also at the square. We look at the Raptors celebration in 2019. The whole city came together at Yonge and Dundas Square, and it was a beautiful thing. So I just wanted to set the table so everybody understands how revered Dundas is to this city, to the cultural and historical fabric of the city. And so on December 14th, 2023, when City Council had an urgent motion from Chris Moyse, basically saying we need to adopt the new Councillor Chris Moyse, my apologies. Late December 14th at 7:56 p.m., an urgent motion to adopt the new name Sankofa Square. 19 councillors in this body said yes, 2 said no, Stephen Holliday and Jay Robinson, God rest her soul, and 5 were absent. And so the next day, people were mortified. The entire city of Toronto, the media, social media accounts, my friends, so many other friends of mine were completely mortified that this city council would decide to just unilaterally pave over our history and pave over a civic space that everyone has wonderful memories of over some shoddy academic scholarship, which I'm not going to get into deeply now. And then the media took the story, and it was bipartisan on how much this was panned. The Globe and Mail called it Toronto's shameful renaming debacle. Yonge and Dundas Square's new name was a chance to set things right. How did it go so wrong from the Toronto Star? Just recently, Now said, to be honest, just leave it. Many Torontonians don't want to ditch the rename of Yonge Dundas Square, especially when we realize this is now turning into a financial albatross costing into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Polls, parliamentary minutes where Dundas is actually vouching for abolition. I can leave it here, you guys can read it later. But 2 more things I want to quickly share with you because I know time is of the essence. The Dundas report, it's entitled, Was Toronto Misled? This is an indictment on the entire process on how we got to this naming fiasco, starting with John Tory caving to a really flawed petition in the first place. I highly encourage everybody in City Council and everybody in media to read this report. It's 80 pages, it's beautifully done. It's called Was Toronto Misled? Misinformation and False Accusations Behind the Decision to Rename Dundas Street. Lastly, there's so much populist and common unanimity against this across the spectrum, left, right, center, black, white, Asian, Chinese, bourgeois, proletariat, you name it. Nothing has unified this city against this renaming like this issue. And so I am pleased to present to this executive committee, and you in particular, Mayor Chow, this petition of 30,000 signatures. Stop the renaming of Young Dundas Square petition from the citizens of Toronto. It's 30,000 names. There's over 2,000 comments. It's eye-opening, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for bringing it here. Come and get it? Yeah. She's right there. Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Holiday to the deputant.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tate, could you tell the committee a little bit about the comments? So the petition is in action. In your experience being involved with the creation of that, what is the sentiment of citizens? I know there's the decision and there's the process. Could you tell what you're hearing?
So I'm really tuned into the media. I'm tuned into social media. I'm plugged in on Instagram. I talk to everybody in my ward, which is Chris Moyse's ward. I'm his constituent, and Councillor Moyse. And everybody, it's like 90 to 10, maybe 95-5 in favor of stopping this. And what's really eye-opening is that people from every background, like I've spoken to Chinese people, there's even Ghanaians and like Jamaicans in here who say this is nonsense. This city has so many problems right now, crumbling infrastructure, garbage cans that don't work. I live in Chris's Moyse and we have to step on human feces all the time. Can we not use Section 37 funds for those purposes? Let's use Section 37 to fix our busted garbage cans, other infrastructure. This is unifying the city. It's an example of bloated bureaucracy to fix a problem that did not exist. Nobody asked for Dundas Square to be renamed or Dundas Street, and that's why this has really turned into like a major movement. I do have comments from constituents of everybody on this board, and I can read them for you if you'd like.
So sometimes council makes decisions with very little notice. There are reasons sometimes that motions are brought onto the floor. I recall this was an example of which there was very little public discussion prior to this occurring.
Practically none.
Did you see that as a dimension in the type of feedback that was captured by this petition?
Yeah,
is that part of the discussion?
That's an absolutely correct assertion. And in fact, one of the most common comments the day after on all the social media accounts like SixBuzz, BlogTO, et cetera, everybody was saying, if we're gonna do this, where was the transparency? Where was the public consultation? And I'll give you an example historically. When they were looking for a name for our new domed stadium in 1987, that was open to the city. I have the Star clippings. 150,000 people said, hey, let's pick, everybody submitted their name. For a civic exercise like this, for a major municipal landmark, if we had the fiscal resources to do it, we could have made it a unifying and wonderful naming exercise. But instead, Chris Moyse decided to
Don't do that again.
Sorry.
That's 3 times.
Councillor Chris Moyse.
Disrespectful. Counselor.
I'm calling him by his name, man.
Keep going,
Like,
keep
I'm
going.
not- okay.
Just keep going, please.
Councillor Moyse,
Just keep going.
please. Chris Moyse railroaded this through council. Mike,
Relax,
why?
just keep
Okay.
going, please, just finish your
Listen,
sentence.
what I want to say to Councillor Moyse is that as one of your constituents, me and thousands of people in your ward are very disappointed in you. And we feel, and we've seen you in media, basically saying that anybody who's against this renaming is like racist or anti-Black. And that's very
Mr.
disingenuous
Tate,
of you to
you're
say.
answering the question to Councillor Holiday,
Through the chair.
okay? Can you please
Through the chair.
address, to the chair, to me,
Okay.
Councillor Holiday is the person asking
Sure,
the
no
question.
problem.
Thank you.
If I can get 2 in.
Please
So
do.
the first question is, in situations where there isn't civic participation, do people then feel a lack of ownership or a lack of connection with the asset. So if the decision is made elsewhere without public consultation, does that break that bond? You know, in your opinion and what
So-
you've heard with respect to the feedback through that petition?
Yeah, so names have energy. Places have memory. It's a collective consciousness. So every time you go to Yonge and Dundas Square in the past, I'll give you an example. I saw Beyonce there. It was an incredible concert. I saw the Tragically Hip there. There was a time when Yonge Dundas Square had great corporate funding, lots of sponsorship, and we had world-class concerts taking place right in our living room. And when we have those
Council
moments,
offside? Are they offside with the wishes of the people?
yes, and council has a
May I
great
trouble you to wrap
opportunity
up?
now.
Your 5 minutes is up.
Council has a great opportunity to do the right thing and correct course, basically. I mean, 30,000 signatures, nothing to sneeze at.
Thank you very much. Another question?
One question.
Okay,
So
Councillor
this
Morris.
motion, when it came to council, as you mentioned, it was actually the same time that we renamed Rob Ford Stadium. Where's your petition for that?
Well, Rob Ford was a legend of Toronto, and he's a legend of Etobicoke, so it's actually very fitting
Yeah,
and
it's very
relevant
telling.
to
Thank you.
name.
Thank you.
Where was the Toronto candidates for Yonge and Dundas? Gordon Lightfoot Square, Jackie Shane Square. Herb Carnegie was a hockey player who broke the color barrier. He was from Toronto. Imagine that, Herb Carnegie Square. So using the Rob Ford card is kind of lowballing, Councillor Moyse.
Not really.
Councillor, okay, any other questions to the deputant? Okay, Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I'd just like you to,
Can you repeat that? Say it on the microphone.
Hang on a second.
I'm being insulted by Councillor
Allow
Moyse.
Councillor
I don't
Fletcher to
appreciate you
ask the
calling me a
question.
racist, because I'm definitely.
Wait, Councillor Fletcher has
Yeah.
the floor. Allow her
Only
to
one
ask the
that has
question
the
and you
floor.
can answer it. Just a second. Councillor Fletcher, ask your question, please.
so just to look at the trajectory here, City Council made a decision to rename Dundas Street. You would agree with that? Yes? At a certain point, City Council made a decision to do that, correct?
Well, John Tory caved
No,
to the
is
petition.
there, did City Council make a decision to do that, yes or no?
Well,
Yes, no? Maybe you don't know?
I recall looking at the motion here that when, on that same December night, when Councillor Holiday put forth a motion to actually cancel the renaming of Dundas Street, you, Councillor Fletcher, voted
I'm
against
asking you
it.
if you happen to remember
Why did you vote
that.
against it?
Sorry, this is not a give and take. As I understand it, City Council made a decision to rename Dundas.
Yeah, it was a terrible decision.
Under the previous administration, there was a number that was attached to that to do the whole street.
13 million and counting.
And then coming back in this new term of council with the new mayor, there was a decision to change the name of Dundas Square and 2 stations. I think that's historically, since you're very clear about record, or what you see as the record, I think that is
Yeah, the renaming of Dundas Street
So
is
that's the record.
still on the books, and it's only been paused.
still the record at the moment.
That's correct.
And thank you very much. And now you've given us a petition, but it looks like it's a Canada-wide petition. I have signature here, Bowmanville, Milton, Sioux Narrows, Calgary, Thornhill, Saddle Lake, Saskatoon, Edmonton, Ajax, Mississauga, Vancouver, Oakville, Keswick,
Cobourg,
Weston, Richmond, Oakville, Mississauga,
Richmond
Harrison,
Hill.
Ontario, Prince Albert,
Yeah.
Vaughan,
Woodstock,
Calgary,
Guelph.
Ganges, Delta,
St.
Welland,
Catharines.
Niagara Falls, Rossland, Mississauga, Erin Mills, Woodbridge,
It's a fantastic
Stittsville,
petition.
Mount Forest, Sudbury, Fonthill, Minden, Logan Lake, Fort Erie, Kelowna, Nanaimo, Collingwood,
Barrie.
Kuspansas, Oakville, Duncan, Alliston, Mississauga, Vaughan, London. And those are just 2 pages. It does seem to me that your 30,000 names are coming from across the country, correct?
Well, across the
Yes or
country
no?
is, no.
No? Are those cities
May
not
I-
outside of Toronto?
May I respond?
Are they, no, I'm asking you. Are those cities outside of Toronto and outside of Ontario, some of them? Yes or no?
They are part of a region called the GTA.
No, I
Remember,
don't think.
there's Dundas,
Sorry,
Ontario.
when did
There's
Moncton-
Dundas
when did
townships
Moncton-
all over Ontario.
When did Moncton become part of the GTA?
We're all Canadians.
When did
This
East
is
Gwillimbury?
this
When
is
did
a
Bonnyville?
microcosm of a
When did
national issue.
Gravenhurst?
So
When did
you're
Brampton?
splitting hairs,
When did
Councillor
Brant- I'm
Fletcher.
not splitting hairs.
For you trying to discredit the petition by saying there's a
Actually,
Moncton signature,
am trying
that's
to-
low stuff, and everybody
sorry.
sees it.
I
There's
am
nothing
now
wrong with the
reading you-
occasional signature from somebody in
It's
Moncton.
not occasional,
It's
that
a
was 2
beautiful town.
pages. Let's face facts.
We are
that
facing
Many of the
facts.
signatures in your petition are from across
Okay,
the
so
country.
we'll put this on
And you're
publicly.
telling me
We'll put
that
this on a
Trent Lakes
website
is
and
part
let
of the
the people
GTA?
decide.
I'm sorry, I'm finished questioning, thank you. Mayor.
Etobicoke, Toronto, North York, Toronto, Burlington, Downsview, Richmond Hill, Concord, Vaughan, Windsor, Mississauga, Toronto, Etobicoke. You're cherry-picking Moncton to discredit the petition. That's also disingenuous, Councillor Fletcher, and the whole city's watching.
But, Councillor Tate, why don't you just finish answering the question?
I'll put it online so everybody can be it. I'm all for
You're done,
transparency.
Councillor Fletcher, okay, thank you so much. Any other questions to the deputants? No? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Next speaker, Joey Scolari. In 5 minutes.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
You can, go for
Hi.
it. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. I would call on Mayor Chow to use her strong mayor powers to end this fiscal, social, and dystopian madness. The citizens of Toronto do not want their tax money wasted on this personal agenda realization. When I was a young boy, I had the pleasure with my Italian immigrant father, who barely spoke English, of meeting Ed Broadbent. He made a huge impression on me. So much so that when I was in the 7th grade at Pierre Laporte Junior High, I wrote an article on Ed Broadbent and the NDP party. He was kind to my father. He was fair to my father. He spoke to my father respectfully, even though my father spoke in broken English and was embarrassed. Years later, when I started in the media business, I had the pleasure of meeting Jack Layton, who to this day, along with Mr. Broadbent, were 2 of my favorite politicians because they cared about what everybody thought. You know, they cared about the majority. They listened to everyone, but they made the best decision for the majority of the people. You know, I shudder to think of what would happen to, you know, the Jack Layton terminal had Councillor Moisey been in office when it was named. Maybe it would have been renamed something else. And this guy's a guy who I looked up to along with Ed Broadbent as a child. You know, the original petition had apparently had 14,000 signatures. It was called Let's Rename Dundas. It was on a site called Lead Now. They claim to be a nonprofit independent organization, but are clearly politically left. If you look at their FAQ page, they're a partisan lobby group. They've been accused of falsifying petition signatures on multiple occasions, and specifically the incident involving signatures on a petition regarding the Kinder Morgan pipeline, which included fictitious names such as Frosty the Snowman and Yogi Bear. These names were discovered during the verification process. Henry Dundas was a documented abolitionist. He didn't achieve his goal. I think that he tried. And his methodology was that he knew that he couldn't railroad it through, but he had a plan, and his plan didn't come to fruition in a timely manner, but it ultimately helped lead to the abolition of slavery. He was responsible for submitting resolutions to Parliament, which made it illegal to import African blacks into any British colonies, plantations, or ships owned by or navigated by British subjects after January 1st of the year 1800. You know, surely spending money on a bunch of signs, which is now over budget. You know, I know Councillor Moyes has been on record as saying that he doesn't have much taste for corporate sponsorship. That's been in the newspaper. Yet, in part of the plan for Sankofa Square, you're going to reach out for corporate sponsorship. So that's kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth from what I can see. Let's get to the name Sankofa. I have a lot of friends that are Ghanaian. I play hockey with them. They're lovely people. They've come to this country to make a better life for themselves. But there's some things that happen in Ghana that are absolutely awful. There's a place called Lake Volta. Have you ever heard of it? It's the largest artificial lake in the world, where children as young as 5 are forced to work for free up to 18 hours a day on fishing boats, which include being thrown into parasite-infested waters to untangle fishing nets, where they usually die a horrible death. The children are beaten, they're sexually exploited, then they usually drown. I suspect that maybe Ghana needs some reflection on how they treat these children. Go to freetheslaves.net for detailed information on how you can help. I've gone there and I've helped. Ghana still has sex slaves. They're called trikosi. They're called shrine slaves. Underage girls are still sent to fetish priests to atone for some family members' sins. These priests commit horrible sexual transgressions against girls as young as 10. I think that maybe we have to take a step back.
Mayor Chow. Mayor Chow.
Oh, no, that's just a fact. I think there's a...
Just 1 second, I have to interrupt you. I have a point of personal privilege from Councillor Perks.
Am I allowed to speak?
Just hang on a second. Yeah, you still have 1 minute, just hang tight. Councillor Perks, you have a point of personal privilege.
Yeah, the City of Toronto has a very strong, open, and available commitment to confronting anti-Black racism. At the beginning of many of our meetings, we read statements acknowledging the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade. And I want to be able to conduct a meeting without listening to the kind of thing that was being said about Black people in Africa. And I really do think it's outside of what's permissible in a public forum like this to listen, to say the kinds of things that the deputant was saying.
Yeah, I agree. So, Mr. Scolari,
I'll finish
I
my
want
last
you
minute.
to focus on
Okay.
the square and the naming and the budget, which is properly in front of us.
Okay.
Not the country.
We have massive financial problems in our city. There's people on the streets dying of drug overdoses. We're afraid for our safety. Yonge and Dundas Square is kind of a frightening place at times. Spending Section 37 money on a bunch of signs to rename a square of any name